Alright bashers, in this video we're cleaning up a mess, and what happened is we just finished RC Jumping 101, the basics, and we used this one. This is the Outcast Success, and we used this one as a demonstration truck, and we had one really gnarly landing. And out of all the jumps that we had, and some of them were intentional where we would show you what happens when you front flip, this one I over rotated coming down and I stabbed it in right up here on this corner, and it caved in the body. I popped that out to get it back in place, but we caved in the body, we bent the shock tower up top, we fractured one of the arms, and we destroyed the diff housing. And what happened is we have the T-Bone Racing wheelie bar on the back. They don't make these anymore, but we have this on there and it sandwiches the chassis. Well, when I hit the ground, this flexed because it hit just at the right angle and it pulled all the threads out of the diff housing and made it useless. So we got on eBay and we bought new diffs, and we bought a new EXP shock tower set, and we're going to go ahead and replace those. The arm is only broken in one little spot here, so we're going to run it till it comes all the way apart. But at the short term, we're not going to change that arm just yet because there's some life in it yet, and we're going to be hard on it anyway. When it breaks, we'll change that. We're going to go ahead and show you how this is done, but at the same time, we're going to shoot a time lapse as well. And if you're a member to the channel, you can go to the member videos and watch the time lapse and see how that works. This should be interesting. Check this out. Okay, so let's get started. We'll get these wheels and tires off. There we go. Some of them are a little stubborn there. And take a look at how twisted that shock tower is. Really bent. So let's get the wing off. This is pretty straightforward. Like that. And let's take a look at things here. So we're going to want to take this one, we're going to need to get the wheelie bar off first. So there's 2 on top and there's 4 on the bottom here. And it looks like I'm hurrying through this, but actually we're going really slow with the power tool. It's just sped up. Let's get this chassis brace off, and this is really bent in here. Take a look at this. This one's still straight. But that one, this is going to take a little work to get out. Here we go. And pressure. And that one's really bent. There we go. And let's get this wing brace off. There we go. Let's have a look at it, see if there's any fractures. These are really flexible, so we'll just bend it around a little and make sure there aren't any breaks in it anywhere. There we go, and it looks good. Set it over here. And let's get this block off, and this is part of the wheelie bar, so this isn't factory. There's 2 screws here. And these hold the hinge pin block in place, these long screws. There we go. And that looks undamaged. Now let's disconnect the shocks. We're not going to take them clear off. We just want to disconnect them from the top here, because we're just going to take the shock tower brace off. There we go. And you can see the bend in it from this angle. There we go. And let's pull the screws off on the bottom. Oh, that one's missing. Look at that. All right, now we want to get the tower-to-tower brace disconnected because that hooks to the top of that differential housing. And I like to put the screws back so I know right where things go. Now the last 2 here on the bottom of the chassis, we'll pull those off. And there you go, the whole clip comes off. Alright, so we got things pulled apart to a certain degree, and the shock tower is definitely a mess. And the arm is only broken on one of the spurs, and it's one of the bigger ones. I think it'll hold up for a little while, so we're going to run it the way it is. But we definitely yanked the threads out of the lower part of the differential housing, which once you strip those out, there's no way to hold them in place. So we will definitely be using our parts. It's pretty much as I expected. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's take the hinge pin braces off. We want to get this differential housing out of the way. There we go. And we're going to disconnect the sway bar. You just twist them a little bit and pop them off the ball, and there's the differential housing. Okay, so you can definitely see it tore all of these out and it broke the corner of this, and all of that is bad, so we're definitely going to have to replace that. And this is really twisted. Look at that. It's twisted really bad. This will be a simple exchange though, since we have the new one to put in its place, and that one's nice and straight because it's brand new. So there's our pieces. So now let's get that tower to tower brace off. There we go. And we want to get the sway bar out, so there's this one cap right here. Pull the sway bar off. This is the new one, so they're identical, just checking to make sure they're the same. Just like that. Very good. Now let's put the tower to tower brace on there. So this is the connector for that, so we're going to attach this to the top, and nice and slow with the mechanical tools here. And always torque everything by hand. There we go. Let's get that sway bar in place. Again, nice and easy. Good. Now we need to put the drive cup on. And whenever you're going metal to metal, make sure to use some thread locker. There we go. Perfect. We'll get that in place. And we want to make sure and push the pinion away a little bit just so we can get it set properly. You don't want a lot of slop in there. Now let's get that shock tower brace out of there. There we go. Nice. Okay, now let's get the standoffs off so we can move those to the new one. We'll keep all those parts together so we know which ones go where. Just like that. Beautiful. Okay. There are those parts. Now we're going to transfer these directly to the new one. So we'll take these two screws out. And we'll put them right on the new one so we don't have to worry about any part confusion. And we can line things up the way we want to. All right. Get it lined up. Get them started. And nice and easy. And don't over torque these. That's just in plastic. Just nice and snug is all you need here. Just like that. Beautiful. Nice changeover. Let's get a little Loctite on this for the standoffs. Don't put a lot on here because you'll have to remove it at some point when you have another problem. So just a little bit will do the trick. There we go. Nice. Okay, now we'll torque them down. And you don't have to put a lot of torque on these, just get them down nice and snug. And we'll just put the nuts on there so we don't lose them. And it takes about 24 hours for that Loctite to set. Okay, now let's mount it onto the differential housing. Real easy. There we go. Nice. Torque them by hand. And let's get that front hinge pin brace in place. And again, into plastic, so always go easy with the tool and torque by hand. There we go. Nice. All right, so we got the basic module built now. So it's got the new differential in here and it has the new shock tower. So everything is back up and true. And all of the ports in the bottom are in excellent condition because this is brand new. It did come out of an RC, so this was a teardown of an RTR, but it looks like they were really careful taking it apart. There isn't any heating or anything, so that should be fine. Off camera, I did pop the diff out and I had a look at it, and it did, because it felt a little loose, it needed one shim. And if you want to know how that's done, don't forget to check out Shimming 101, and that's in the 101 playlist, and I'll show you exactly how to do that because each one shims differently depending on how everything lines up. This one needed one shim, so we added that. It's all looking pretty good. Let's put it back together. So there's our build so far. Let's get this sitting in place, and don't forget to tuck that drive axle in there when you put this on. And since we're using the T-Bone Racing wheelie bar, we're just going to put the two in the front to hold it together until we get things assembled, and you'll see why here in a minute. We'll get those in place, set everything down, and we'll get that hinge pin brace in the back in place. Now that goes in under the chassis. So those two front screws held that in place while you get this lined up. Now we'll move this to the back, and that'll hold it all together. Nice. Very good. So let's put the block on there, and this will hold that hinge pin brace in place from the other angle, which keeps things lined up. There we go. And even if you don't have a T-Bone Racing deal, there's still those two screws that need to go in. Alright, now we're going to use fuel tubing here because the bottom of the chassis is chamfered and it leaves space. So these two pieces of rubber with this particular wheelie bar will take up that space and keep things from walking back and forth. So they're really necessary. So it should look like that. And those will squish right down into those chamfers and it'll hold everything center. That's why we do this. So those go in the front, and a little bit on each side to get it walked down even. There we go, and then torque them down. And that's being done by hand. And then the back two. And we don't do the center ones this way because we want to have those right in the chassis to hold things in place. We'll get the top two screws in. There we go. And the wheelie bar's installed. Torqued by hand. Beautiful. Now let's get those shock absorbers on. So you get the small ball in there and then the cover. And we'll just connect them up and bolt them in place. There we go. Same thing for the other side. Just like that. And these have nylocks, so you shouldn't have to put any Loctite on there, but there will be a little residual Loctite from what we did the first time. Now let's get that sway bar connected and get the upper arm in place. Just like that. This can be a little awkward, but just hold it in place and get it started. Like that. There we go. And then torque it down. And same thing for the other side. Sway bar first, axle second, and then top brace last. Just like that. Washer and then nut. We'll run it up. And then we'll torque it down. There we go. Now we had a problem with our speed control coming loose, so we're going to go ahead and put a little tape on the bottom and we're going to bolt it back down. Just like that. And now the speed control's in place. Let's do that tower to tower brace. And now we'll put the wing mount on. So we had two new screws for the top here, but we're going to use the old ones. They were slightly bent, nothing too major, and they'll work just fine. Nice and easy. And then let's get those upper bolts in. So the long one, keep in mind that on the motor side you use the longer spacer, and that gives you some offset to your brace so it doesn't hit the drive axle going to the rear. So short one on one side, long spacer on the motor side. Just like that. Second one in. Tighten them down. Perfect. Let's get that wing on. There we go. And let's put the tires and wheels back in place. go. And with this particular tire set, it's important to get the tread pattern going the right direction. So over the top of the tire, the little V's should face forward. That body in place. There we go. Build complete. All right, so there you go. That's the rebuild on this, and we got things looking pretty good. We did have a pretty substantial bend in the shock tower. I mean, it's really twisted, and the problem with this is normally you would take and think you could straighten this, and you could, and it might last for a little while. But once you bend these, the temper's pretty much gone out of that area. You can bend it back, but it will bend a lot easier the next time. Recommendation, just order a new one because they are unbent and they're stronger. Still, at the same time, if you're low on funds and having problems with that, you can take a rubber mallet to these and pretty well straighten them up. We have a press in the other room that would help us do that, but we've straightened a few of these and they don't generally hold up. If you can bend a new one, you're going to bend a used one. Still, at the same time, with this, when we hit the ground, it pulled all of the screws out of the bottom of this, and that's unfortunate. There is a lot of pressure on these, and everything connects to this, from the shock towers all the way down to at the bottom where you hook the wheelie bar that we have on it. This is the first one we've done this to, and we hit really hard, and you could just hear it crunch when it hit the ground. We did fracture one of the arms, but it's just one area of it that's fractured. The rest of it's pretty stout, and I pulled on it and I couldn't get it to open much, so we're going to run it the way it is and see how long that holds up. So if you haven't already, don't forget to bash that like button and help our content spread. You know, we run these pretty hard and we really enjoy working on them. That's part of the hobby for us. Some cars are more expensive than others, but at the same time, the joy's the same. This was a pretty quiet build, and most of the time when I'm in here and I'm not filming for the studio, I just crank the tunes up and I don't say nothing. I just get to work because that monopolizes my thought process. It's relaxing to me, and it's really nice when you're done to see what you've been able to accomplish. It's really a feeling of accomplishment when you return something to perfect working condition. This is ready to go. It needs to be cleaned, but we'll get to that. That's what's coming in the future for this one, because we want to get the other body on it and get it back on the shelf until we use it next time. So if you have anything you'd like to add to this video, please feel free to get down in the comments and help others along the way. For AJ Jam Studios, I'm AJ Sam. Keep ranching.